Welcome.
Okay.
So we'd like to begin this morning with our morning song. So you can just join where you are. I don't hear you, Janine.
Well, that would be a very basic thing of like unmuting myself. Okay, let's try that again. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
That was my practice. We come together in this moment. We bind our hearts and minds, for we all form a tapestry woven from one life, one creation, undivided, all unique expressions of God. We come together now in one accord. Let's do that one more time. We come together in this moment. We bind our hearts and minds, for we all form a tapestry woven from one life, one creation, undivided, all unique expressions of God. We come together now in one accord.
Thank you, Janine. And so let's just take a moment now and begin our morning with prayer and opening up to that realization that as we come together, our very connection blesses each other. That each of us create together this experience this morning. So let's take a deep breath. That one breath, the very air of the earth that we share, knowing that we are sharing breath, that we share the divine mind, the wisdom of God, the one heart of love, as we say our prayer. Oh, great love, thank you for living and loving in us and through us. May all that we do flow from the deep connection with you and all beings. Listen to our heart's longing for the healing of the world as we open to the infinite field of compassion, wisdom, justice, peace, and radiant well-being that is always available. From this place of conscious oneness, we choose to live in your flow. And we offer our prayers in all the holy names of God. Amen and amen. So I'd just like to take a moment and welcome you, and also welcome those. We have people that watch us on our YouTube channel. So if you go to our website, you can invite people to sign up or to get to our YouTube. And our website is unitychq.org. And if you're looking for Chautauqua and hoping to join us this summer, which would be wonderful, that you can arrange that at chq.org. And we are right now doing once a month, the first Sunday of every month, we're doing a service. And then beginning late June, we'll do 10 weeks in a row, the Chautauqua Summer Series, followed then in the fall again by the first Sunday in each month. And just what I realized that got me really excited is next month, our service is on Easter morning. So for me, that is such a special gift. I look forward to everyone joining us for that, in that connection. So what I'd also like to invite you, I almost forgot, that we have been studying Eye of the Storm by Dr. Gary Simmons. And we also like to take what happens on Sunday deeper so that you can add some of your input into how this experience, how what I'm sharing this morning affects your life. And so that happens this Wednesday at 6:30. Use exactly the same information that you got for this Sunday to join us this Sunday, or again, you can go to our website. So welcome. And I'm turning it over again to Janine. Janine's going to lead us into our Sunday experience.
Okay, this is a song called I Am the Thinker by Sue Riley. Thanks for introducing me that song, Barbara. Thinks the thoughts, changes things that shape my life. I am the thinker who thinks the thoughts. I have the power to change my life. You can try that with me. We'll be doing it a lot. It's going to stick in your mind. I am the thinker who thinks the thoughts, changes things that shape my life. I am the thinker who thinks the thoughts. I have the power to change my life. And if you ask me who am I am wisdom, I am light, I am more that meets the eye. I cannot be defined. I am a thinker who thinks the thoughts, changes things that shape my life. I am a thinker who thinks the thoughts. I have the power to change my life. I am a thinker who thinks the thought that changes things that shape my life. I am a thinker who thinks the thoughts. I have the power to change my life. And if you ask me what am I am beauty, I am joy, I am more than meets the eye. I cannot be defined. I am a thinker who thinks the thoughts that changes things that shape my life. I am the thinker who thinks the thoughts. I have the power to change my life. I am the thinker who thinks the thought that changes things that shape my life. I am the thinker who thinks the thoughts. I have the power to change my life. I can choose to be the light that brightens someone's darkest night. I'm so much more than meets the eye. I cannot be defined. I am the thinker who thinks the thoughts that changes things that shape my life. I am the thinker who thinks the thoughts. I have the power to change my life. I have the power to change my life. I have the power to change my life.
Oh, I love that song.
It's gonna
It
stick in your
just,
head.
yeah, it, at this time in the world, that song is so meaningful, especially because a lot of us are thinking about what's happened in the world and our thoughts about it. Like, how am I'm going to live with that. And this week, our chapter in Eye of the Storm is I want to see it right. I want to see it. So obviously, if I want to see it right, something's got to shift for me because there's a lot of people saying a lot of things in the world right now. And to sift through those, and I want to know the truth. And Jesus says in John, the truth will set us free. So, what is that truth, though? How do I get to that truth? And that's what we've been exploring over these first Sundays of the month. So, I'd like to begin with this story. I thought this was just so cute. And there is a gatekeeper, and he guards the gate to this town surrounded by a large wall. And a visitor comes, a traveler comes up to the gate and says to the gatekeeper, tell me, what are the people like in this town? And the gatekeeper turns it around on him and says, well, what were the people like where you were before? And the man thinks, and you can see the scowl on his face, and he goes, oh gosh, that's why I left. They were mean and inconsiderate, and they disrespected me. Oh, the gatekeeper says, well, I'm afraid you're going to find the same people here. And so the man turned and left and was on his way. Well, a little while later, another traveler shows up at the gate and says that same question. Tell me about this town and the people in it. And the gatekeeper turns it around on him again and says, well, tell me where you've been and what that was like. And the traveler says, oh, it was amazing. I so enjoyed my visit there. The people were warm and friendly and made me feel like I was one of them. And the gatekeeper looked at him and said, you know, you're going to find the same people here. And he opened the gate and invited him in. So my experience in life is that at times when I am the person who expects those kinds of outcomes in my life, it's what I find. And even the outcomes that aren't exactly like that, I find that I can walk peacefully in those times, understanding that my intention and thoughts create an influence. Now, do they change everyone? Absolutely not. In fact, my job is not to change anyone, but only to hold for me an intention that I not only am attracting my good, but in the times when it doesn't feel so much like that, I am shifting in a place of compassion and openness. So, Gary Simmons, on this chapter, we've been doing the 4 winds of conflict. And if you remember that Eye of the Storm, what it talks about is this is a technique for imagining that life's kind of like a hurricane. And in conflict, we're sitting in the whirling storms. And there are ways that we can move into the center of a place of peace. And so he defines 4 winds of conflict. Last month, we talked about the wind of the feeling of separation keeps us in the whirlwinds, and then to move to the storm when we know our communion, our oneness. Well, this week, he says this is the second wind of conflict. And he says that's misperception. The idea that we really aren't seeing the truth, as Jesus called us to that truth that will set us free. We're not free at all because we're sitting out there churning in the storm. And what Dr. Simmons says brings us to the center. What brings us into this place, not only of peace, but actually of power? Because when we live, as Gary Simmons says, on principles, and one of those principles is our thinking. And not just our random thoughts, but those thoughts we deeply hold. Many of them are subconscious. So that's a real journey to get to a place where we can actually believe, as Dr. Simmons says, and this is a tough one. I would challenge any of us to stay there at any length of time. I know it's a constant thing. My whole life has been to believe that nothing and no one is against me, that nothing and no one. And so to get there, I have to keep saying, I want to see this right. What am I seeing? What misperception am I seeing? Because if I really believe that nothing and no one's against me, then the difficult things in my life, I wouldn't see as an adversarial, but I would see as a place of healing, as an opportunity for me to practice such a deep experience of God that I would move into such a place of thinking and feeling that I could take what was coming at me or coming within me and find a place of compassion and healing and peace. And finally, I think so important is power, that I would feel this power. And part of it is that the way we're raised as kids, as at least the way I was raised in the church I went to and everything, we saw ourselves as human, striving for a spiritual experience, right? I was just a miserable human that had sinned, and God had to fix that. And so I was never very good at it. And if I could follow the rules, not follow my heart, but follow the rules, maybe I would be part of God's kingdom. But in Unity, we say, actually, I'm a spiritual being, that actually I have a divine pattern within me. And this is the principle Gary's saying, when we follow principles that move us to the center, when I know that I've mistaken, I've misinterpreted what's going on, and I keep saying, I want to see it right, I want to see it right. And when I do the work that takes, then I shift. And then I start I really see that nothing and no one is against me. So as I was reading this chapter, something else, of course, I love how things come together because I'm listening to Friar Richard Rohr, who has been at Chautauqua, and he's written The Universal Christ. And he's somebody I follow on his podcasts and his newsletters and things. And he was talking about this way to visualize what we have to do to get there, to get to this place where we know who we are and that we have that divine pattern, that we're made in the image and likeness. And, you know, in the Apollo tempo, what does it say in the Greeks, in the ancient Greeks? Know thyself, right? That how do I know myself enough to undo the misperceptions? And he has a pattern for this, and he calls it the cosmic egg. It's so interesting. So let's picture that our life is like an egg, and the yolk is my story, the story I have about my life. Then the white of the egg is, oh, our story. I belong to some part, to some groups and experiences that I call ours. And then the ultimate, when we can integrate my story, our story, into the shell of the egg, the universe of the egg, which is the story, the universal truth. So I'd like to share a little about what Richard Rohr says about this. And just the process that it goes through, because, you know, we say, oh, I'm just going to change my thoughts. Oh, easier said than done, right? I don't know about you, but it's not quite that simple. And so my story is about us proclaiming, this is me, according to Richard. And it's the private world of my interests, right? My search for individual significance, he says, that contains my private life and those issues that make me special, inferior, superior, right, wrong, independent, and depending on how I see it. So I'm looking at life through that I am the source of everything in this. And you can kind of see that with the 2-year-old, right? It's like mine and nobody else's. They are focused on ourselves, and it's a natural part of our progression is to get a sense of I and my story. And he suggests that we go through contemplative prayer to understand both the great parts of our story, but also the false parts of the story that can lead us, this small self, to feeling insecure, afraid, scrambling for significance. And in Jesus' languages, he quotes from John, "The branch cut off from the vine is useless." In other words, if we are just the branch, the my story, and we're not connected to a vine, a larger story, our story, but especially the story, the truth, the universal truths that you can, the word useless is very interesting because I thought it means that we're just not being all that we could be. And think about that. I mean, you've probably had that experience where you've been around somebody focused just on my story. That can be pretty boring, is it not? And we might call it, the word often used as narcissist. That's a very, though, psychological term that has a lot more to do with it than that. But it's that feeling of just being absorbed. And it's not that we deny that pain, but at some point we take the pain of my story plus the blessings, we look at it and we have great compassion for it. We no longer hold those so tightly as all that we are. When we start understanding that we're made in the image and likeness, the story, that it shifts and we can be so understanding. Not only that, but when we understand my story and both its difficulty as well as its blessings, we so invite other people. But if we're blind to my story, then the trap can be that we can go to our story, which is, as Richard Rohr says, this is us. Now, if I haven't dealt with some of the shadow side of my story, I'm going to go find a group in our story and I'm going to go project it onto other people. So the group I may join, it can be, and we've seen a lot of that when we haven't done the personal healing, we start throwing the accusations into the public sphere. And we then join groups, so it's ours and theirs, or this is the good side and this is the bad. And we're watching that play out, that lack of self-awareness that could actually heal, instead is polarizing and dividing our story. So Richard points out our story, that this is for that it is necessary for our identity and our security as beings. We do need an our story. It's valuable when it's a healthy our story, but it can also become, it doesn't make up, as he says, I love his words, the whole enchilada. When we think our story is the story, that's when we get into trouble. And you can see this in some religions that say, our religion has the only answer. That is taking our story and saying it's the universal story. And all you guys are condemned to suffering because you don't adapt our story. That you can see that in nationalism. Right? Any ism, when you put an ism on the end of a word, it can be positive, patriotism, right? But we've also seen some of the most negative examples of patriotism because the love it or leave it, love our country the way it is. And the thing about our story, which I'm really loving right now, is we're really examining as a country our story. It's important for us to do it, I want to say, as individuals too, to look at the story that I've adapted from my religion, my ethnic background, all those things. And when we are becoming curious as a country about our story, I just read Caste. I finished reading Caste, which was very insightful. I knew most of it in there, but the woman Wilkerson tied it all together, and I started seeing the parts in our country that have not been healed, the systemic parts in our country, and we so point at people's racism, but that it ignores the part that's causing it, the root cause of it. And so by examining, some people are saying, well, I didn't do it. I was not the person who did that back then. I didn't enslave people. I didn't do this. Why should I have to deal with that? Well, the thing is we've inherited our story, and we don't understand, as the author points out, how deep that goes. And so what a compassionate thing to invite a bigger view of our story, including the most difficult parts, and to bravely face them with compassion and love and an invitation to heal, because that's where our power comes from. The minute, as long as we stay can you feel like the polarization in our country is sucking energy? I mean, it's sucking this creative energy that could be used for healing. So I get a bit discouraged at times when I hear some of our stories that are going around, but I'm also encouraged that there are more people that are looking at our story and willing to face it, and both on our individual levels, but as a systemic, as a country, to face our story, to heal that. And one of the ways that we heal that is to realize that the story, that when we move and we can appreciate our story, but also appreciate all the other our stories, then we start moving to the place that Richard Rohr calls the story. And the story is the universal story. In unity, we have certain principles. I would say those are what we believe are unity principles. And I am not going to claim that unity principles are the story. You have to try those out. But my experience personally is that I know it's the story when I feel love and compassion, openness for all different kinds of religious practices, ethnic practices, when I can hold compassionately and lovingly and acceptingly and be the loving presence, then I know that the part of my story is contributing to our story. And so that is the challenge we have now, is in this cosmic egg, is not to get too stuck in making my story the only one, our story the only one, but embracing this opportunity right now with all that's happened to support the story. So part of that, so what gets in the way of that is thinking that is kind of holding that role of being maybe a victim. We could see that in a lot of my stories right now. I'm not having that curiosity and wanting to understand a bigger perspective. And so if we're stuck in, like, let's say our story or my story, it's very tempting, isn't it, to gather evidence? I've done that. I think that I can go down the politics rabbit hole as good as anyone and start thinking the other group, how could they feel that way? And so right away, I've cut off the creative part of me that can move out of our story and the polarized idea into the big. And so I watch myself when I'm reading, like I'd like to read newspapers and things and keep up, and I look to see if I'm gathering evidence. And I've caught myself in it. And then what I do is I kind of ask myself, and I saw this, I can't remember where I heard this, but somebody said they saw it on a t-shirt and I heard about it, is what if I'm wrong? Isn't that a great Can you imagine wearing a t-shirt and saying, and that you say, what if I'm wrong? Wonder if I don't have the big picture here. I just love that idea. It's been sticking with me and I'm thinking, what if I don't understand some part of our stories or my stories? Because after all, we see the outside of people, right? We don't really know the inside. And so we judge people by the outside And the benefit we have about ourselves is we see the inside and we see our intent. And most of the times our intent is truly loving, even if we've misinterpreted what's going on and we have misperception of things. We're trying our best, but we'll take that other person and go, well, if they believe that, they can't be trying their best. And we don't at all touch the inside. So it's very easy to gather evidence, and later, maybe, if we're brave enough to have conversations, we discover that our evidence is really incomplete. And if we could walk in somebody else's shoes, we'd really have an expanded view of how they got there. One of Gary Simmons' favorite lines from our book is, tell me more. You know, like, instead of fighting and making them the enemy and the adversary, wow, tell me more about that. I'm curious how you got to that. And just being this compassionate presence for that. So I want to tell you another story, and this one was cute. A friend of mine sent me this story a long time ago, and I just came upon it this week. Again, I love how those things show up. So this is a story about a man who's walking down the street. And as he's walking, from above on a windowsill, a potted plant falls off and nearly misses, crashes right in front of him, inches from his head. He could actually feel the energy. Okay, so now he's got a choice to make on how to, just as we all do, on anything that startles us, upsets us. And in the story, he had 4 choices. First, the path of the knee-jerk reaction. You ever have that? So I have that, but I'm smart enough now to take a breath, sit, do not say anything, and come to a place of peace. But were I to react, it said that in this story, the man started shouting at how dare you do that? You're not careful, blah, blah, blah. And then ran up the steps for the apartment and knocked on the door, swearing and cussing at the person for doing that. Okay, story 1. Another path the man could have taken. And this is the path of the victim. God, everything just always happens to me like this. I am gathering evidence. See how busy he's gathering evidence that bad things happen. And not only will I gather it, but you know what? I'm going to go and call my friends and tell them, and they're going to commiserate with me. And now we're going to be the Ain't It Awful Club. So have you ever done that? Once in a while. I'm pretty past that, but there have been temptations when I've wanted to vent a little on that. Okay, third possibility, the path of detachment. Well, things happen, you know, that's okay. Missed that one. Okay, that sounds pretty reasonable. Many of us, that might be the approach. We've learned to control our knee jerk. We've decided not to go down the victim story. Good. But there was also in this story a 4th path that the man could have taken. And this was called the path of love. He could have looked at the plant, said, oh, I bet that person is going to miss that plant. That was probably something beautiful on the sill. He could go down the street to a store, to a plant store, go buy another potted plant, go back to the apartment, knock on the door, and offer the plant. So Gary Simmons talks about the part that we have all these choices. And he says it's quantum possibilities. If you look at quantum physics, at any one time, there are an infinite amount of possibilities that we can do with our life. And once we set our intention, the other possibilities fall away. And so the minute we make up our mind, that becomes our experience and what we're going to see. And so, this is just so interesting. I read a book about that very thing, kind of touches on this. And it's on the bestseller, New York Times bestseller list. And It finally came due at the library and I got it. And it was called The Midnight Library. And maybe some of you have read it. And it's a woman who has made choices that she's very unhappy with in her life. And it points this quantum possibility thing. And so she overdoses. And she tells the story of all the things that could have happened, but they didn't. And she just must have chose the wrong thing and her life was dead-ended. And so in the time that the drug is taking effect, she visits a midnight library. And the woman there is from her high school. It was a librarian who was so sweet to her when she was in high school. And the library is filled with the infinite possibilities of the choices she could have made in her life. And so she gets to select an idea and go down a path that she didn't go. So that's the whole story. She tests this one and looks at the result, tests this one. She finds out the results weren't what she had predicted by a long shot, of making different decisions. And she also discovers that her father wanted her to do one thing. She goes down that path, didn't work out. Her brother wanted her to do everything. Different people. So she's trying, and she finally goes down a path that fits her. And so you're thinking, oh, they're going to let her keep that book. That's the library. She pulls a book off the shelf and goes into this possibility. And she tries all these things. But she comes back. And at this point, she decides she wants to live. And so she's coming out from the hospital in having taken this drug and she's being revived. And now she knows she's not being handed this story. Oh, it just happened, because these other stories, she's already in the process of living them, these choices. She now has to go through the cleaning up. And they let it hang there, the cleaning up, to get to this vision she saw of what her life could be. I just loved it. And it's that idea of the expansive thinking possibility. Another little story, and this one's just a funny one about expansive thinking. There was a train that was going across the country. And it had two engines because of the distance and that it was being pulled and everything. And after going some distance, one of the engines failed. And the engineer said, okay, well, that's really going to slow us down, but it's okay. It's no problem. We'll just keep going. But after another little while, the second engine failed and it became the train was at a standstill. So now the engineer's thinking, oh, God, I guess I'm going to have to share with all the passengers what's happened, make an announcement. And so he goes and walks back into the train and he says these words, ladies and gentlemen, I have some good news and some bad news. The bad news is that both engines have failed and we will be stuck here for some time. Now just imagine you're on that train. What would you be thinking? It's like, have you ever had your airplane and you had to spend the night in an airport? I have that feeling, and there are groans. And then he says, but there's good news. He says, you're not on an airplane. For me, that was the expansive, and the whole crowd, it says in the story, just laughs and they're just joyful. The shift in possibility thinking, humorous possibility thinking. So how do we live in this principle? How do we get to the story? As I spoke before, it's really looking at the kinds, both in my story and our story. What are the things, not only that bless me, but the things that are a misinterpretation of who I really am? And so as a spiritual being. And then seeing through the eyes of God. Seeing through the eyes of God, my story, seeing the eyes of God of our story, the parts of the groups and that I participate, and then seeing the world through that eyes of God. Now in unity, we say, our first unity principle we say is there is one presence and one power in my life and in the universe. God the good, omnipotence. That God is this omnipotence. Now, I have to say, there are times I forget that. And it's pretty easy to forget and to really be embedded in life. But the times that I have remembered that truth, that principle, which is, I believe, is the story. How do I know? It's because it takes me out of the conflict of the storm and brings me to the center. And not only that, when I see it right, when I change the way I am viewing it with the potentiality that there are other ways to see this, then I start not only feeling love, but power and compassion. And the interesting things at those times when I can move out of feeling that things are against me and that there is this presence that is for me, amazing things line up, and things that I could not figure with my mind start being solved in the most incredible ways. So the invitation for us is to understand that by seeing it right, that we now shift and open to extra additional possibilities of freedom and to transform our world. And I'd like to share with you the words attributed to Gandhi. I will keep my thoughts positive because my thoughts become my words. I will keep my words positive because my words become my actions. I will keep my actions positive because my actions become my values. I will keep my values positive because my values become my destiny. So the invitation is to allow your thoughts to become your destiny, to move through your values, through your life, through your world. And so now we are going to enter a time of meditation. And Janine came up with this wonderful song. And I hadn't thought about it for a while. And I remembered how much I loved it. And so I invite you to allow her words as we do our meditation to be the mantra for your daily life. Janine.
Our thoughts are prayers, and we are always praying. Our thoughts are prayers. Take charge of what you're saying. Seek a higher consciousness, a state of peacefulness, and know that God is always there. And every thought becomes a prayer. Our thoughts are prayers, and we are always praying. Our thoughts are prayers. Take charge of what you're saying.
Okay, so let's just breathe that in, those words. That God is always there in every moment of our lives. And our thoughts and our actions and our feelings are an expression of prayer. In each moment, we have that amazing power and gift of coming into that center place of peace and compassion and love by slowing down and breathing into each experience. Knowing that as being made in the image and likeness of love, that we can allow our lives to become a prayer. Let's just take a deep breath together. And begin by appreciating that each breath is a prayer to life. Again, noticing our breath. My very breath, a prayer to the life within me and the life around me. The life within all beings, connecting me in prayerful awareness. My breath embracing all sentient beings, the very earth, the trees, the air, the sun, the universe. My breath a prayer. This is the breath, the air that Jesus breathed as he walked. The air that Moses breathed, that Buddha breathed. That the great masters and all that have come before me, that have blessed and made possible my life this day, have shared this breath, this prayer. And so now I think of how I might start each morning being aware of my breath and the prayer that it gives to the universe. And knowing that it is a breath that is a gift. I allow that gift to open my thoughts to each day. That as I walk through my day, through my experiences, that I am a living, breathing consciousness of prayer. Again, let's bring our awareness to our breath. The gift of life. The gift that transforms us. Our thinking, our being, our very life. And so now we move into the silence. Holding the gift, the oneness of the one mind, the one heart, the one breath in the silence. And so I honor that gift. The gift that prays me with each breath. One heart, one mind. I prayerfully move through my life with the gift of my breath, reminding me that God is always there. God is always there. Now every breath, every thought is my prayer. And so it is. Amen and amen.
Our thoughts are prayers, and we are always praying. Our thoughts are prayers. Take charge of what you're saying. Seek a higher consciousness, a state of peacefulness, and know that God is always there. And every breath becomes a prayer. And every thought becomes a prayer.
Thank you, Janine. Oh, now I hadn't planned on saying that about the breath. It just came to me that is what connects us. And that feels really good. I can't wait to just keep interrupting my life with an awareness of that, my prayer, how I'm breathing and praying my life. So now it's our time when we have that opportunity to allow God's generosity to move in and through us, to know that God is always there and moves in and through us in abundance. And if you would like that opportunity to give, at the bottom of your email is an address that you can send a check to Unity of Chautauqua. We are working on a button that will be in the email so that you can give that way through PayPal. But for now, and so many of you have done that, and I just want to thank you. That has allowed us to carry on throughout the year and also to support our ministers coming in for the 10 weeks, which I just can't wait. It's an amazing gift, not only for us, all of you and me, but for them experiencing Chautauqua and we being able to support that. So hold the gift, and that gift today can be also your breath, your life, as we say our offertory blessing. Just hold this with me. And you see how our hands, I love her hands that are outstretched, not giving and receiving. And that's what our life's about. So we say together, divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. And I am grateful. I am grateful for this life, for this breath, for this community. And so it is. And let's join together as we sing.
I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful for all that I have. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful for all that I have. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful. I am so blessed.
So just take that in, a deep breath of knowing that you're blessed, that God's good, that God's good is an invitation in every moment, an invitation to say yes to being blessed. So now I have our world, and if you would just join, if you would just imagine, I have this nice squishy world. Many of you have seen this before. Would you imagine your hands are on it with mine, that we're just holding it in our unity prayer protection as we say it together. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. And we bless our world, and we bless our community. Amen. Amen. And thank you for being here.